I'm Jason Klom. I'm the host of the Comedy on Vinyl podcast. All of 2017, I swear, I'm listening to a comedy album a day. I'm definitely playing catch up. To the point, though, where I'm talking about all these today, so, buckle up. Now, I have well surpassed, we're on day 130-something, and I am on album 109-something. So it's a matter of just sticking with these suckers, and discovering, how important they really are to me. I have given away albums since I started doing this, and so it's an interesting sort of experiment. I was going to say go to Instagram, or go to YouTube if you're watching on Instagram, but you can't because this is going to be way too long. I already know. But yeah, I've going through albums. It makes you realize you really do love the good ones, and I am obsessed with hearing as many as possible. But there are also times when you see an album cover that I might have previously been excited by, and now I'm kind of dreading them. I still have. It's more of a morbid fascination than it is. Wouldn't this be cute? It's more now. Oh God, I should probably listen to that, but I'm probably also going to regret it. That said, there's some really good ones in here. There always are, if I do a full batch. I've got some new ones sent to me by some very kind people also who want me to listen to either their album or stuff that they've worked on or stuff they're interested in. And so I'm going to get to all those. And I've also got one in here that I realized I teased months ago and never delivered on. I hinted something about IBM, and there's something about IBM in here, and you'll find out what that is. First one, 94. Album 94 is the Goons. It's Goon Show Classics. There's, it's typical Goon stuff. What I thought it would be clips. It is not. It's two, had I looked at the cover closely, there's clearly two different stories on here, two different shows. But these are, at least a solid 22 minutes of two of their different shows. 22, actually. I think it's a full half hour of each. So that would make it. And this is from 1975, and it's the Goons. If you don't know the Goons, it's funny voices, silly characters, and not a whole lot that's comprehensible goes on, and that's kind of the delight of it. So listening to it, very easy to kind of fall into just listening to the amazing voices that they're doing or the goofy voices they're doing. There's a lot of audience that genuinely is just eating this shit up, and it's a lot of fun. I'm trying to see when these were actually recorded, because I realized this came out in 75, I'm not sure that okay, there we go. So the first one is broadcast 56, second one broadcast 58, which is crazy because on the back they're clearly, them later in life. But it's just super fun. If you want to listen to where the Monty Python voices came from, for example, listen to this. Also Firesign Theater. You'll hear a lot more Goon voices than I expected in Firesign albums because I'm hearing it a lot more now. I've listened to a bunch of these, but this was back when I used to bootleg comedy a ton, and I'm trying to get into listening to more Goon stuff as much as possible, because I enjoy them. They're very silly and hard to follow in terms of, if you're expecting a really great, solid story, that's one thing. Then Phyllis Diller laughs. This is a great cover, of course. It's just so much. It's a lot of the same, but Phyllis Diller's just fun to listen to, and she's a delight, especially when she's laughing at herself so much. There's just so much of her just breaking. She'll do a little joke and just, she's just got this insane, just fun to listen to laugh. But, it's so much of her being, a housewife. Again, that's mostly the gag. And I wish, I'm looking at my notes, there's not a lot really that stood out particularly in terms of jokes, but I do very much enjoy Phyllis Diller, and I always recommend listening to her. It's a ton of fun. It is very much like her other albums that I've heard, but it is a ton of fun. I also should correct myself. I realized back when I talked about Joan Rivers, I think both times I said, she only need to have 2 albums. Well, that would be true if she only had 2 albums. She had 3. I just realized I've never heard the first. I don't know what my excuse is for saying she only had 2 albums, but that's a screw up on my part. She had 3. Then, on a future possible guest request that actually hasn't happened yet, I listened to the Bye Bye Birdie film soundtrack, with starring Anne Margaret, which, interestingly enough, small part in the play. She's basically the star of this movie, even though Dick Van Dyke was quite popular at the time, to his chagrin. This album, while I love a lot of songs like Put on a Happy Face, Kids, because, I mean, you know, Kids is just a fun song, especially just with Paul Lynde. Paul Lynde's voice is great, and you honestly, I guess I never thought about what a good singer he was. He's still doing it in that voice, but he's can carry a tune like a son of a gun. Obviously, Anne Margaret can sing. Most of the songs in this album, in this film, are pretty sexist. I guess I had forgotten. Did I write down? Well, actually, right here, How Lovely to Be a Woman is mostly your purpose is to find a man. Underneath it is what it ends up being. And there are a few others that are just like that. It's still fun, and the gentleman who plays Bertie is it Bobby Rydell? Oh God, I think it's Bobby Rydell. It's a pretty good little Elvis impersonation. But yeah, it's more sexist than I remembered. I'm sure the movie is fun, and if you're not paying attention, maybe you wouldn't notice it, unless you're woke. In which case, you definitely notice it. And the music is great, though. I mean, the music's a ton of fun. But yeah, it's more sexist than I remembered. Speaking of, well, there might be a little bit, there probably is more than I will admit to myself normally. Grew up watching this film a whole lot. What are my notes? It's hard to say. There's no comedy on this, but it is a soundtrack to a comedy movie, Arthur. If you like Christopher Cross, this is for you. If you don't like Christopher Cross, you're probably most people. I actually really like that theme song. I like this album. It's okay. Now that said, as far as albums go, let's see how many songs are actually on here. It's full length. 1981. It's a brilliant film, but I mean these are like songs that take themselves way too seriously. It actually is so funny is I had never heard the soundtrack other than what's in the movie, and some of these songs I don't recall hearing in the movie. Seem like it might be conceptually tied to it, but they feel like, having just seen Guardians of the Galaxy 2. Sort of seems like an off-brand Guardians of the Galaxy 2 soundtrack, only because there's some stuff that's just so similar to stuff that was real big at the time. But I don't know these songs. I'm maybe just a little too young, except for Arthur's theme, which I love and I delight in, and I have the single of too because I don't know why. I do know why. I love that film. If there's a soundtrack to Trading Places, if there is a soundtrack to Trading Places, get it for me. I had a VHS that had both those movies on it. Watched them constantly as a child. Should not have happened. Album number 98 was given to me by my best friend, mostly to force me to listen to it. That is Walt Disney's Uncle Remus. Of course, songs from Song of the South. I don't want to white-splain this, so I'm going to be real careful. The songs are, as songs go, good. I will not in any way... I will not crap on the gentleman who played Uncle Remus because he was great, won an honorary Oscar, but he was great. He's wonderful. Uncle Remus, in case you're not aware, Song of the South, a movie that Disney has buried for, I guess I understand the reasons, however, I think it's worth it being out there just to know about it and know more about it. Uncle Remus, not a slave. However, he's like a lot of freedmen at the time, seemingly still kind of in the situation that a lot of ex-slaves were. This is after the Civil War, of course. But the big thing, of course, is that he's a very jolly man living in a country where he has still so few rights. That's the problem. Great actor, great singer, a lot of fun. Pretty tragic story. The songs, as they are fun. I'm a little concerned listening to it that some of the background singers may not be African American themselves. Let's say that's very likely. Can't be sure, but like a lot of Disney productions, super white. I enjoy Song of the South, or I did as a child, and I wonder if I still would. I'm guessing probably not, because again, I try to be sensitive to these things. But it's not about a slave. It's not about a happy slave. Doesn't really justify most of what happens. But he's a great actor. He deserved all the accolades he got. I think that's the thing to celebrate about this, if you're going to celebrate something. And also, you know what? It's a great ride at Disneyland. It's a lot of fun. Go through the line at Disneyland and just make jokes about the South. Nothing against the South. I mean, make jokes about the racist part of this. You understand what I'm saying. The old civil... I get it. It was about cotton. Listen, so we got, that's album number 98. Number 99, this is the one that I teased a while back. This is a double album. I did not cheat to count this as 99 and 100. It is a double album, double thick. bunch of white guys on the back. Speaking of white people, a bunch of very sparse. This is a gatefold. You'll understand why that's interesting in a second when I tell you what this is. This is the International Business Machines, IBM Corporation, Electric Typewriter Division 100% Club, 1960. This is a gathering in Santa Monica, I believe at the Civic Auditorium, if I'm not mistaken. This is a show put on for the 100% Club, the ultimate salesman at IBM, International Business Machines. Right? It's just such a, you're not used to calling it that. And I first saw it sitting in the 50-cent pile at Atomic Records here in Burbank, and I looked at it, figured out very quickly what it was, and realized, I wonder, now this is performing for a bunch of whites, and, seemingly flew a bunch of people out from all over the country. What was the entertainment? Was there entertainment? Is this, 45, hour and a half of speeches? No, it's primarily sketches featuring this guy who was a shitty salesman trying to get into the 100% Club, and at the end finally makes it into the 100% Club, meaning, like, if you just barely try and worry about getting into it, you'll eventually be good enough. The sketches, they just roars of laughter for shit that you can tell perfectly tailored to them. What I don't know, and I need to do a little more research on, see if I can find it, is who is in this. If there are any, there have to be local actors. There's no way that they pulled all these people from IBM. They have to be local actors. It was for one event only. There's just not enough information on here, but it's technically a comedy album because it's mostly comedy. There are speeches in between, but it's mostly actually, and here, the weird thing is, and here's the head of sales in the Midwest, and they introduce Johnny McSales, and he comes up, and then we cut to another sketch. So clearly they wanted to get to the stuff really everybody loved, but it's I'm not kidding here. This is 2 discs worth of very personalized comedy. I don't personalized in, it's very, very niche, is what I meant. You can see, it's hard to see because this is bad lighting, I apologize, but, there's dancing folks. I would love to have seen this. Honestly, if there's a visual record of this besides just these photos, I would absolutely love to see this. I wish I hadn't waited so long to listen to it. I had listened to parts of it and like, oh, well, this is promising. There is actually sketch. It says sketch. It doesn't mean sketch in some other form that I'm used to. It is actually. This album is a gift to IBM ET personnel and must not be used for promotion, advertising, or for broadcast in any form or for profit in any manner. I bought it for 50 cents. Hardly think that's a profit. Now, 100. I wanted to do a special episode on this, but I fell so behind that I'm not going to be able to. This was given to me by a friend, and they said, well, you haven't heard this. You absolutely have to have this. I apparently already had I think I recently got a copy of it, gave it to a buddy. I just gave away probably 30 or 40 records because I'm just trying to get rid of stuff that either doubles or that I don't care about, or I think somebody else might be interested in discovering, sort of. But this is one I did have a copy of recently, but I had never listened to it. It's called Revolting. It's by Congress of Wonders. I'm trying to figure it out. They're clearly, this is, I think, if I'm not mistaken, 75. 75 or so, it doesn't say it on here. But these gentlemen are very fire sign influenced. Heavily so. I'll give you an idea. One thing is called the Stoned Ranger. Stepney Fetchnick. As sensitive as it sounds. Pigeon Park, Flipping on the Hod. There's a number of different things in here. But they're heavily produced. They don't sound as good as a fire sign. I wouldn't say they're as dense or necessarily as the humor's not as literate. I won't say the men aren't as literate. The humor's not as literate. It's not that difficult to sink your teeth into. It'd be like an easy fire sign. Like if I were trying to do a fire sign album today, it'd probably be closer to this. There's some stuff in here that's a little culturally insensitive, but I think most of it's done with the knowledge that it is for a reason, but I can't quite figure out the reason is, so I don't want to necessarily justify it. It's cute. The commercials are pretty good. Didn't necessarily stand out to me as something that I would listen to a bunch. It's fine. But it was interesting. But this is one that I saved because somebody did want me to especially listen to, and I did. I'm happy to revisit some of these too because in the rush, you do wonder if you've missed some stuff, and you probably have. You being me. All right, 101. This is Tony Webster's Marriage Counselor. I actually, I had a few notes on this in here. I kind of like this one. Again, what is this, 63? Well, we'll just say mid-60s. It's very simple. It's one thing. It's live. Tony Webster plays a marriage counselor, and he has various people come in as different couples. Some famous, some with just obvious games to the sketch. Let's see. So we got understanding the husband's career, happy anniversary, woman's best friend. Okay, so they're intentionally. One of them is Henry VIII, and he says, "But I want a divorce," and another one, something like that. The jokes are cute. For the most part, they're pretty funny. Actually, let me check something. Sorry about that. I literally had to search where my other notebook was. I sometimes will forget a notebook when I'm going somewhere. So let's go through some of the bits that I found in here. So where are we at? Where we go? Yep. Okay. Very, very, very difficult to read. Adam and Eve are there. There we go. Adam and Eve. Let's see. Let's see. There's the Duke and Duchess of Winslow, and that's the Duke of Winslow divorced. So he refers to himself as the Duke and Duchess of Winslow. Let's see here. Oh yeah, and the Adam and Eve one stood out, I think, because Eve just kept saying, "Well, there's another woman." That's basically all it is. It's a very simple series of little sketches that get the point across pretty quickly. And I'm grabbing my other albums here. I think get the point across pretty quickly. And I think there's one racially insensitive one. Skip past that one. I tend to do that. At this point, it's like, well, I get what you're doing. But for the most part, the joke's actually pretty good. One of them actually was, my favorite joke was the darkest joke on the album, and that was just that, where's your husband? He's supposed to be here too. Well, I murdered him. And it's pretty simple. That's it. This is dumb. She, basically just missed it by a minute when she should have done it. Here we go. Next is, I've been waiting to do this forever, and I can't wait to actually talk about it at length on the podcast itself. The Producers by Mel Brooks. The soundtrack, it's got all the great music on it, but it also is primarily clips from the film, audio clips. It tells most of the story. The story is here. It's interesting because it's similar to how they put together the Young Frankenstein soundtrack, which is something I've been very curious about, and I actually hope my fans, or at least people who are watching this, might know a little bit of something about this. In Simon Pegg's autobiography, he talks about having a record in which the Young Frankenstein, the entirety of Young Frankenstein, somewhat similar to the way my Faulty Towers records have full episodes, that he had all of Young Frankenstein on an LP, which would have been 2 LPs. Now, the soundtrack does do a good job of telling the story in 45 minutes, but I do wonder if that has ever existed. I cannot find it anywhere. I believe Simon Pegg when he says he heard it, but I've never been able to find anything like this. So if somebody out there knows what that is, tell me about it. Even if it's a bootleg or something. I would love to hear that. But the Producers is the Producers. You should see the Producers. It's brilliant. The play's fun, but the original Producers film is brilliant. It'd be hard to say this stands out because it's all stuff that stands out about the movie. But it is a pretty good recreation. I think it would make you want to watch the movie if you hadn't seen it before. It'd be weird to listen to it first, but who cares? It's got great music. Springtime for Hitler is a classic. You can't get better than that. The Producer soundtrack, I listened to that. That was 102. 103 is something that I picked up not knowing, again, what it would be. And that's the All in the Family album. And, this is, the assumption is it's a sitcom, so it should be, it's not full episodes, and I knew that. Was it going to be clips interspersed with music? Was it going to be just a soundtrack to music? But it's not a show that used a bunch of music. It was a sitcom. So what it turns out to be is just really, really, really good clips of the show itself. To the point where it's been a while since I've seen it. I'd completely forgotten. I do want to revisit it because of, Archie Bunker is supposed to be this guy who's deep down got a curiosity and a willing to change, but he's a fucking asshole. And this doesn't shy away from that, because why would it? That was why it was so damn successful. Sally Struthers might be on 1 or 2 tracks. I actually just realized it. Edith, I'm so sorry, I don't know the actress's name, on very few tracks. It's mostly Archie, mostly Meathead, or Archie interacting with people of color, which is always fun, because he's just the piss is constantly being taken out of him. It's so much fun. I really enjoyed it. I really, really like this album. I think it's one of those things that genuinely kind of does give you an idea what the show's about. At the time, it's such a novelty. I don't know what the purpose of it is. This would be a thing where if somebody hadn't seen the show and I had this available, I'd be like, listen to this. I might actually just do that. Let them listen to this and find out what the show's about for themselves. but it's a weird choice to make this. The next one, I should just do this with, because it went mostly over my head. I mean, you can know a little bit about Howard Hughes, but this is called Will the Real Howard Hughes Still Stand Up? It's by Dave Barry and Company. Dave Barry, not the Dave Barry that you're familiar with, a gentleman named Dave Barry who made this record in 1972. It's just a bunch of gags about reclusive Howard Hughes, who was notoriously... there's if you see the movie that I can't remember the name of, but I feel like an idiot, starring Richard Gere. But either way, it's called Hoax. It's about that movie is about pretending that Howard Hughes that he had interviewed Howard Hughes, and Howard Hughes, of course, are recluse. And this is an album of sketches that I seemingly just sort of propose what would happen if this person was actually in contact with Howard Hughes. I'm not sure why this exists. It's fine. There are some bits and pieces that are okay. I mean, the jokes are well put together, but I think this is a cultural moment I missed and don't understand the significance of. Again, 1972, he wasn't dead yet, so was he? He might have been almost dead. Either way, this came out at a weird time, and probably at a good time. It's a weird time for me to be listening to it now. I'm going to admit it went mostly over my head. So that's all I can say. What didn't go over my head is this gentleman was the first stand-up I ever listened to, I'm pretty sure, because I had the pick of Billy Connolly. And this is Billy and Albert, Billy Connolly at the Royal Albert Hall. And this is typical Billy Connolly. He's a guy who went from being a folkie, as he describes it, most people would, folk music player, but went on to want to play, to be a comedian. That just turned out to be what he did. He has the energy that is so critical to Billy Connolly's humor. I wish I could describe him better to American listeners. If you don't know Billy Connolly, you might know him from TV or movies. Head of the Class. He was in Head of the Class for a while. He took over for the original teacher. He's in The Imposters, which is a great movie that you should see if you haven't. He is in Mrs. Brown, which is one of the great historical dramas that I've ever seen, and he's wonderful in it. But he's Billy damn Connolly. I don't know how to describe his comedy other than to say it's very, I was going to say raw, that's not right. It's very plain language, the plain language of a Scotsman. I learned accents from listening to him, so I had to listen through to sort of figure out what he was saying, and eventually it was very easy to understand him. But he'll talk about anything in a refreshing way, not in a filthy way. He swears, but he swears conversationally. He'll talk about masturbation. He'll talk about sex, and he does it in a way that doesn't make you feel uncomfortable. There's so much joy in what he says. I really like a moment on this when I don't think it's a part of the bit, because you can design bits like this. He gets lost and I forgot what he was talking about, and it seems genuine. If it's not, he's a better actor than I even knew. But this album is just so much, even if you don't necessarily relate to it. I mean, he's got like a 10-minute bit on trying to put on a condom. And this is 1987, this album came out. And, this is, still in the middle of the AIDS crisis and trying to understand it, but it's super open-minded. I don't think there's a bit on here that's just, I don't know. Billy Connolly is charming as fuck, and I've never not liked him. Even later years when he was kind of a Scottish George Carlin in some ways, and still kind of was in this era, because he had this very whimsical look at life that makes you appreciate things in a new way. Even shit you wouldn't care to think about otherwise, he'll make you think about them, and it makes me very happy. We're kind of at a weird point in my record collection where I started just to kind of burn through this stuff alphabetically. Billy Connolly is a new one I've gotten. Actually, this one I got recently as well, and I do have a whole slate of BBC records that are going to be in this. I did try and mix them up. This one is the Two Ronnies, Volume 3. Did not look it up to find out if there are a Volume 1 or 2, or if it's just both of them, just being silly. Yes, it's Ronnie Corbett, and then the other Ronnie, whose name I can never remember. Oh my god. I know it's on here. There we go, Ronnie Barker. So they're funny. They're brilliant. They're sketch comedians. This album has, it's filled with groaners, which I really, really like. Tons of really delightful puns. Where's the one? I did write this down. Wait, but did I write it down on here, or did I write it down on here? We'll find out. Maybe separately. I wrote it down on both. Nope, there's the producers. Never mind. Forgot to mention Love Power. That's also a very great song of the producers. That's a brilliant, brilliant, brilliant song. And yes, I did just see it on a note. And then, actually, one really good gag on the Billy Connolly album when he's talking about making love and how he was conceived during a war. And that's the bombs dropping, don't kid yourself, is something he imagines his mom saying. Just the idea of talking about your parents having sex in that detail is hilarious. There we go. They do a couple of fake news bits on the two Ronnies where they're just basically headline jokes. But again, they're puns. The world's untidiest man has just died. He's now lying in a state. Now, that's very dumb, but it's filled with those. There are a lot of character bits. There's one bit where there are two old friends. They're old friends. One of them, I've settled down. I've had a family. You know what? I'm enjoying the single life. So what are you here for? Oh, well, I've got my girlfriend here. She's 20. Oh, really? She's 20. Yeah. Oh, she's a goer. And then all this stuff. And what are you here for? Oh, she's here to meet her dad. Oh, really? I'm supposed to meet my daughter here. And then it turns out not to be his daughter. And then he goes back to being a dirty old pervert. And it's pretty funny. Human Condition stuff. It's a great album. It's a lot of fun to listen to. I say that so much because I don't know another way to express it. But I do like the two Ronnies, and I've only seen a few of their sketches because it's not a show I was able to grow up with. But this is one of those where I think you would want to see the show. I'd like to see more of their old stuff. And their new stuff. Their new stuff is still funny. Of the newer things that I saw more recently. Album number 107 is Shelley Berman's Let Me Tell You a Funny Story. This was actually recommended to me by Shelley Berman's archivist. And I like Shelley Berman. I've always liked Shelley Berman. I always forget that just how possessed he is in terms of his voices are just so very strong. He does a lot of the same ones, I think, but they're very energetic. But my favorite bit on this is not formed the way his are traditionally. There are bits in between where he's telling you about why this sketch came about or what I wanted to do here. So it's not just it's not like a set necessarily edited together. It's different stories. My favorite bit on here is actually just very sweet, and it's him telling the story about his father, an old world Jewish father, finding out that he wants to be an actor, and he's embarrassed to ask for money to go to acting school, and just finding out that his dad is going to let him do it. And it's just so sweet and cute. It's one of the sweetest things that you've ever heard, especially with first generation American story, but also from, if it would have been the 30s or 40s when the story was actually happening. And it's just sweet. It's very funny because of the way, because the rich picture he paints of who his dad is through his accent, through the way he talks about things, through his concept of money. But the fact that he goes through it and maybe thinks his son's going to waste his time being an actor, but still cares enough to let him do it as long as he works hard. It's very sweet. Very American, and I like Shelley Berman a lot anyway. And it's kind of interesting that he went a different route with that particular album, and it also doesn't have the word side in it. So it's kind of fun. A lot of fun to listen to. I'm just going to say that every time now. There is a George Carlin album. There are a few, but there's one that I hadn't listened to and thought I had, and that's An Evening with Wally Londo. This one, I've talked a long time. One of the albums I grew up on. Yep, learn to speak, Jason. One of the albums I grew up on, his Class Clown, one of my favorites of all time. But that's everybody's favorite. I can see that if I had picked this one up, it would have it doesn't have the 7 words, but it also would have had, I feel like it would have had some impact on me. It's same old George. I noticed a couple tinges of, not anger, but very just shortness with the world. There's some things where there's a little bit of fuck this concept, fuck that. Not saying it even, but you can hear it in there. You can hear the part of him that's a little frustrated with certain things in the world. But the rest of it, kind of hippie George, kind of let's talk about words. There's a whole lot of that. The baseball thing is on here, and I don't know that I've heard this version because he did it again. This is not the only time he did it. Football is played on a gridiron, and there's that's a great bit. And this is not, I believe it's the first time he did it. He's another guy who, again, talking about Billy Connolly, really likes to talk about masturbation, but he does it in a really, really funny way. He's got, there's so much of him playing with words. That's what he did. Hippie George Carlin especially really liked to play with words, and I know a lot of people like Latter-day Carlin more. This is the guy I grew up with. This is the guy that I love listening to so much, and made me think about words, for better or for worse. And why would it be for better? But anyway, I don't know. I'd never heard this one before, and it's kind of a nice continuation of Class Clown. And you can hear a little bit more. There's always a bit of cynicism underneath what he talks about. And it was interesting that eventually that kind of blossomed into, turtleneck. Black suit, Ponytail Carlin. Ponytail Carlin comes out of that. So you have to dig for the heart in that. This, you don't have to dig for the heart. You have to dig for the message. And I don't think it's hard to do that. I think it's harder to do in the later stuff, to differentiate, to really find the heart in those. They're there, but he wanted to make you work for it. Here, it doesn't make you work for it so much. He's just your buddy. And I like Carlin, who's my buddy. It's a very fun album, and I will listen to it again because it's delightful. And even the football baseball thing is really, it's a little different than I think the more polished version you hear now. But later on, he must have tweaked it a bit. But I don't know. I'll always like George Carlin. Well, there we go. That's a ton of albums. That is up to 108. Over the next week or two, I should be caught up. One hopes. Fingers crossed. I have most of those actually recorded and ready to go. And I'm very excited to listen. A few more soundtracks. Let's see, we've got another Belle Barth coming up. We've got a few more. We've got my first Proctor and Bergman album. Yes, that's right. I'm interviewing Phil Proctor on the Fireside Theater's history, and I haven't heard every album he's done. Speaking of which, in a few weeks, there will be another one of those coming up on the regular Comedy on Vinyl podcast. Go to comedyonvinyl.com. You can listen to the album, every episode where we just talk to different people about their favorite comedy albums. We've got a lot of very interesting ones coming up. We got Greg Turkington coming up. Greg Turkington plays Neil Hamburger. I wanted to call him Jim Baloney or something like that for a second. I wanted to call him the wrong thing. I couldn't think of it. We got Greg Turkington coming up. Christian Brune from Orphan Black is coming up. Jackie Cation's back on the show. A lot of really fun people. Some really weird fucking albums are in there too. Some stuff that I wouldn't normally listen to, but therefore have to because it's on my damn podcast. I got some albums that have been sent to me that we're going to be listening to more on here. So I'm excited. You know what? I will talk about this one. This was just sent to me. It's called The Gift You Didn't Ask For. And I'm very, very excited to listen to this. This is sent to me by somebody who listens to the show, and I am ready to listen to it. Now, I'll be perfectly honest about what's in it once I listen to it, but I'm very excited because, full disclosure, he sent me a digital version, but I waited. I wanted to listen to it on vinyl. Yes, it's by Jared Jeffries. Sorry, I didn't say his name. Jared Jeffries, and Peyton Brown is his partner, comedy partner. And the cover's great. The cover's enough to make me listen. I mean, that really is half the game. I will listen if it's got a good cover. That's because I am mental. So please subscribe to Comedy on Vinyl. Subscribe here if you haven't already. Subscribe on iTunes. Go to stolendress.com for all our other stuff. I do 3 podcasts a week most of the time. I've written a couple of books, got some feature films out there with other ones in the works. That's it. My name is Jason Klom. Thank you for listening, watching, and as always, have a good thing.